We agreed to meet at the rising of the moon. Robert told me that the hills wouldn't be terribly dark, so I needn't bring a light if I didn't want to. He would come to the gate so that I wouldn't have to walk far alone. I didn't know my way around these hills like Robert did. I was grateful that he'd said he'd come to me, for I wasn't entirely sure where he lived. I knew that the Veery's vast estate bordered Mr. Finch's modest yard. I wasn't sure how big it was exactly, but Robert had assured me that it took well over an hour to cross completely on foot. He came for me as promised, smiling triumphantly. It occurred to me that his upbeat mood was because he saw me standing there. He must have thought, if only for a moment, that I wouldn't be there. Surprise flashed in his eye, but I decided to say nothing. Perhaps it was a trick of the light. When he greeted me warmly, I returned his greeting with the same friendly warmth. He offered me his arm, and I took it, trusting him to guide me to our destination. "It's a lovely night out. There's barely a chill," I say. "I find it all the more lovely now that you're here too. I honestly wasn't sure that you'd want to go out with me, Serenity." Robert had some sense of modesty after all. "Of course I wanted to meet you, but I do wonder where we are going." "To sit and chat in the field under the moon and stars." "Which field exactly?" "Any one that happens to catch your fancy." He hadn't planned the excursion out much, seeming to know that I would relish in choosing our place, a remote hill which looked directly over the forests below. Night sky seemed almost endless, the full moon massive, dominating our vision, spreading a soft yellow light upon everything that the night attempted to obscure. I chose a particular spot in the grass and sat. Robert sat down next to me, a respectable arm's length away. He seemed pleased enough just to have me here beside him on this otherwise lonely night. I don't know if he dared to hope for any more. Did I? We spoke more of our families since they dominated our lives. He had another life at Lockwood Academy, but he didn't say much about it. He was always getting into trouble at school. He told me that he made the mistake of crying the day his father first sent him away, and that branded him from the beginning. He was only 9 years old at the time. The other boys had already decided that he was weak. Robert preferred home, even if he had to deal with his father more often. I wish I had loved my own home even a fraction as much as he did his. He didn't mention his mother, but I knew better than to ask. He didn't want to talk about her. I'm sure he had a good reason. Maybe it hurt him too much. I never heard anything about a Lady Veery from any of Mr. Finch's friends, so I took it that she had likely already passed on. In turn, I easily offered information on my parents and how much I missed my older sister, Hope. It brought tears to my eyes to be able to speak of her so freely. I couldn't even talk about her to anyone else because she was considered a shame. To my parents, she was as good as dead. Robert seemed to understand. He had brothers. I'm sure he was imagining what it would be like if one of them ran away from home for love. Most people would think it a mad act of self-banishment. I don't think so, and I could tell by his attentiveness neither did Robert. "Hope and Serenity, your parents both gave you beautiful names." "I hate my name." "Why? I think it's lovely." "It doesn't suit me. It's so peaceful and calm, and I don't feel like that at all." This notion amused him highly. "What do you feel like, then?" "Not a girl who ought to be named Serenity." "That's fair. My name's ill-suited, too. My father named me, even though my mother wanted a different name for me." I didn't agree with him remotely. He was undoubtedly a Robert, but I was curious, so I asked him, "What would your mother have named you?" "Andre. It's actually my middle name. She still got her wish in a small way." "Andre? That's so continental." "Well, she was Russian, so I suppose it would sound odd to you." "No, Robert is much better suited for you than Andre, I'm sorry." He laughed along with me. "No need for apologies." I just couldn't imagine him as Andre Veery. It was wrong somehow. Robert couldn't be any different from what he was. I liked him, as he was, just fine. "If you don't like being called Serenity, what do you want me to call you?" Serenity had always been my name. It honestly never occurred to me that I could change it. It was a predestined thing, as inescapable as my marriage to Mr. Finch had been. Not so, Robert told me in asking such a question. I could choose my own name. "Wren. I want to be called Wren." "As you wish, my Lady Wren." He nods to me with more respect than I am due. I'm no great lady. You don't have to address me like one, I was quick to point out. He was from a class where the women were ladies. I was not of that esteemed class. Robert was looking at me. I felt his Caspian blue eyes on me, but I didn't return his gaze. I concentrated on the grass by my feet. Are you ashamed of yourself? You have no reason to be, he says quietly. I couldn't say anything to that. I came out here because I didn't want to rot at home alone. I couldn't begin to conceive how perfectly wretched it was to have your entire life planned out for you when you were just 17. He was about my age, but still free as far as I knew. Or did he understand my misery? No doubt his father would try to bargain him off some kind of noble family's alliance. But that was maybe 5 or 6 years from now. He still had to finish public school and then head off to university. His education would not be denied him. Then perhaps he'd be dragged back here or sent elsewhere to meet his betrothed. The whole idea irritated me more the longer I thought about it. You're just as trapped as me, aren't you? I hadn't meant to say it aloud, but the words fell from my lips all the same. I turned, looking to him. For some time he just stared mutely back at me. He slowly nodded, amazed that I knew about his situation. Is it obvious? His voice came out much softer than I had expected it to. No, I didn't realize it at first. Wren, Nervously, but I cut him off. I was sure I already knew what he'd say. He'd like to hear his thoughts repeated on my lips. Look, you can't control it. Your father made all these decisions for you. You don't like what he's decided, which is why you're sitting out in this field with me in the middle of the night. This is your rebellion, because if your father found out, he'd be so cross with you. This future marriage match of Robert's must have been dreadful. To get him to run about in the night like a lunatic. Maybe he was entirely moonstruck and fancied me a better match. I was honored, truly. How wonderful it is to feel cared for by someone who inspired such deep feeling in one's heart and thought in one's mind. You're right. You're completely right. He had this look on his face that looked like a true smile with a slight twist of guilt. I wonder why. Maybe he felt bad for the girl who was being sold off in the marriage, his supposed future bride. His gloved hands were shaking. I didn't realize it at first because it was so dark out. Even with the moon's generous light, things could still be hidden in the shadows. Wren, you're really happy with me as I am? You don't find me repulsive? The ease with which words came to him before now had vanished. His nerves were taking hold of him, though I couldn't imagine why. Repulsive? No. Where on earth did you get that idea? I found Robert to be the opposite of repulsive. He was intellectually engaging, not bad to look at either. Had to admit he was attractive with his unusual charm. Up until now, he had been rather confident and forward, more so than he should have been in all proper circumstances. Truly, I enjoyed his attentions. I had welcomed his affections. I knew it wasn't my place to. He gave them easily, as if it were like breathing for him. Was that typical of a man trying to woo his preferred lady? My experience with men was so limited that I had no one to compare him with, other than my husband, Mr. Finch. Robert was nothing like Mr. Finch, which is why I preferred him. Again he faltered. He wanted to tell me something, but decided against it. How odd. He was usually such a talker, for I had seen him with his brothers. Often it was difficult to get him to stop talking. So what is it that he was trying to say that was so impossible? Yes, I turned to him again to encourage a full answer. Wren, I adore you. That was barely a secret, but still it hit me so unexpectedly hard. To hear him say it aloud made it real. There was no pretending I hadn't heard him. We were looking directly at each other when he said it. I am not completely convinced that's what he was originally going to say, but it had a more positive effect than he probably anticipated. My hand found his in the grasses of the moon-illuminated field. We moved so much closer together than when we had originally sat down. Before I could even think, his lips were on mine, or my lips were on his. I couldn't be entirely sure who made the first move. This, barring my marriage day, was my first kiss. That kiss wasn't remotely enjoyable, as I hadn't wanted Mr. Finch's terrible teeth anywhere near me. To think he almost put me off kissing for a lifetime. Thank Robert Very for blessing me otherwise. I was to be the young poet's lover, a fitting part for a girl who yearned to be loved in ways that she was denied by the confines of respectable society. I was too young to be married, too young to be anyone's mother, though motherhood would no doubt come to me soon if I were a good wife. Currently, I was proving to be quite the opposite. I was sharing a passionate kiss with the local lord's son. If I hadn't abandoned my senses, I'd realize that this was a disastrous move on my part. When had it ever been a good idea for a girl to run off with a boy she barely knew? I wasn't thinking that as I kissed Robert. He had proved to be so many great things. Caring, sensitive, thoughtful, expressive. Couldn't imagine him being the harbinger of my ruin. As I pulled away from him, he looked a little confused as to why I had done so. He needed to hear what I had to say. I will be your lover, faithful only to you, barring everyone else, I said, because I believed that I desperately needed to escape from Mr. Finch. Wasn't patient enough to wait for someone else to offer me help. I was tired of playing princess. It never suited me anyhow.